It was then that I grabbed a large rock and threw it through the windshield of Tom's car. That did it. His face went red and stormed towards me and tried his best to punch me. I did let him hit me a few times, and then I punched him as hard as I could in the stomach, which made him double over. Once he was dazed, I ran into the building and barricaded the door. Both Beth and Jennifer ran to the door to see what the commotion was all about, and I told them to call the police and tell them that Tom had gone crazy and attacked me. Meanwhile, Tom had recovered and was trying his best to break down the door and get to me. Hey there. So listen, I'm going to be honest with you and just say up front that I am not someone that you really want to know. I have a story that I want to tell you, but I'll just let you know from the start that I'm one of the villains. But maybe you'll understand why I did what I did, and while you may not approve of my actions, at the very least, you might understand my motivations. But yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself a bit here. Let me start off by saying my name is Clyde. Well, actually, that isn't my real name, but someone like me doesn't exactly go around giving out their real name to just everyone. I live in a small apartment building that has 4 units. Across the hall from me is a woman named Beth. Below me is the owner of the building, Tom, and across from him is Jennifer. Both Beth and Jennifer are roughly the same age as me, and if I wasn't a scumbag, I would happily ask them out. Both of them are simply gorgeous, but are as straight-laced as they come. Truly good people, and honestly, I can respect them for that. I mean, I live a life that tends to break the law, but I respect those people that can make a go of things without doing so. And Beth and Jennifer are just such people. However, our landlord Tom isn't. He isn't a criminal like me, but he isn't a good person either. Hey, Beth, Jennifer, both of you are late on your rent.
No, we're not. We're paid up in full.
Trust me, you are. But if you want to think of alternative ways to pay the rent, I'm sure we can come to an agreement.
Holy crap, Tom. Why do you always have to be so pervy? And no, we know for a fact that we have already paid. Why do you always do things like this?
I hated Tom. Beth and Jennifer were really nice people, and they didn't deserve to be treated like that. Tom was such a pervert and would make all kinds of nasty remarks. It really did bother me, but so long as he didn't act inappropriately. Well, any more inappropriate than he already was at least, then I didn't see a need to step in and do something to him, but I always kept an eye on him. More than once, I stumbled into the lobby and saw him casually glancing through Beth and Jennifer's mail. He never took anything or opened any letters, but it made me very suspicious of him. Then one day, I was in need of some money, and I knew that Tom was collecting rent from the rental properties that he owned. He owned 4 other buildings like the one we lived in, and he kept the rent money that he got from them at his place and deposited it in the bank the day after he collected it all. I knew this because I had followed him to the bank a few times after the first of the month and saw him deposit a large amount of money into his account. Money that I could really use. I owed a few $1,000s to an associate of mine in exchange for some drugs that I was going to resell and make a sizable profit. But I needed some extra cash, and knowing that Tom had it, I made the choice to sneak down to his place and take just what I needed. I snuck downstairs and made sure he wasn't home before I picked the lock and let myself inside. After a few minutes, I found where Tom hid the money and helped myself to just what I needed. He had it all in an unlocked safe hidden under his bed, along with a box of videotapes that were labeled after Beth and Jennifer. I thought it was rather odd, and so I took a couple of them as well, and then snuck back up to my own apartment, making sure to not leave any trace that I had been there. Once I was back in my apartment, I hid the money and then got ready to see what was on the tapes. As soon as I hit play on my TV, I was blown away with what I saw. It was a recording from inside Beth's apartment. Her bathroom, to be exact, and the tape showed her taking a shower. As soon as I realized what I was watching, I turned it off. Sure enough, when I checked the other tapes, I saw that they were the same thing. Sometimes it showed a camera in their bathrooms, and sometimes it was in their bedrooms or kitchens. It seemed that Tom had put cameras in a bunch of different places in the girls' apartments. Judging by the angles of the cameras, I assumed that they were in the ceiling lights and getting a bit paranoid. I checked the lights in my apartment and was relieved to see that there weren't any cameras in them, which meant that Tom only spied on the women in my building. Although judging by the amount of tapes that were under the bed, I had to assume that either he had been filming the girls for a long time or that our building wasn't the only one he had cameras in. I was incredibly angry. I had always suspected that Tom was a complete sleazeball, but I had no idea just how nasty he was. An idea suddenly came to me, though. If it worked out, then I would be able to not only get rid of Tom, but also make sure that he faced justice as well. I called up Beth and Jennifer and invited them over to my apartment. They were reluctant at first, but they eventually agreed to come over. I put the tapes on and left the room out of respect, and when I was sure the tape was done, I went back in the room to find both Beth and Jennifer incredibly embarrassed, but also furious as well.
How did you get these tapes? Why would you show us them?
I won't say how, but I took them from Tom's apartment. Listen, that pervert has tapes like these from all of his buildings. I don't know about you guys, but I love living here. It's a really nice building. But so long as Tom owns it, it's not a safe place to live.
But what can we do? It's not like he is going to sell it anytime soon.
I have a plan for that. All I ask is when the time comes that you back me up, no matter what. They reluctantly agreed. To be honest, I wasn't sure why they trusted me, but I think the respectful way I showed them the videos helped. And so I waited until it was time for Tom to collect the next month's rent, and while he was out of his apartment, I snuck into, and I stashed the drugs I had bought with the money I had stolen from him among the tapes that he had hidden under his bed and on the kitchen counter as well. And then I went outside and waited in my car. Once I saw Tom pull up, I waited until he got out of his car and was several feet away from it. And then I drove my car into his, with enough speed to cause some serious damage. When I got out, Tom ran towards me to confront me. "What on earth are you doing? You idiot, you totaled my car." "I did? Well, maybe you shouldn't have parked illegally." "I wasn't parked illegally. I was in my designated spot and you just wrecked it. Are you drunk or high or something?" "Of course not. But then again, I turned you down and didn't buy drugs from you." "What are you talking about?" "That's it. I'm calling the police." That was of course what I wanted, but Tom wasn't in the right frame of mind for what I had planned. It was then that I grabbed a large rock and threw it through the windshield of Tom's car. That did it. His face went red and stormed towards me and tried his best to punch me. I did let him hit me a few times, and then I punched him as hard as I could in the stomach, which made him double over. Once he was dazed, I ran into the building and barricaded the door. Both Beth and Jennifer ran to the door to see what the commotion was all about, and I told them to call the police and tell them that Tom had gone crazy and attacked me. Meanwhile, Tom had recovered and was trying his best to break down the door and get to me. That was when the police showed up, and once they had calmed Tom down, Beth, Jennifer, and I went outside to speak with them. The officers split us up, and while the one that got the girls and my side of the story, the other officer went and spoke with Tom. I told the officer that I accidentally ran into Tom's car, and he blew a gasket and even threw a rock at me, but thankfully missed and hit his own car. Both Beth and Jennifer confirmed that this was the truth. I then told the officer that Tom had already been upset with me because he had tried to sell me drugs, but I had refused to buy any. Between my story, the bruises that were on me and the girls backing me up, the officer became suspicious and left to check Tom's apartment. When she came back, she threw cuffs onto Tom and then threw him in the back of her squad car. I assumed that she had found the drugs and the videotapes, and while she hadn't watched them, she surmised that they weren't anything good. With Tom arrested, we went back inside and celebrated in my apartment. The girls were confused about what happened, but were glad that Tom wasn't in the building. Sure enough, more police came the next day and cleared out Tom's apartment, finding more and more evidence as they did. For a few weeks, we didn't hear anything, but then a news reporter got a hold of the story and announced that Tom was looking at going to prison for the rest of his life. The drugs charges against him, which was a frame job, I know, was the least of his concerns. After the police reviewed the many tapes, they found that Tom had indeed placed cameras not only in his tenants' apartments, but also all over the city. To make matters worse, he had made a website where he was selling compromising photos and videos of hundreds of different women and had been doing it for years. The man was quite wealthy and had used that ill-gotten wealth to buy all of his apartment buildings. Because of this fact, the police seized all of his assets, which included the buildings and all of his money. Soon after, the police held an auction and sold the buildings at a reduced price out to the public, and seeing an opportunity, I bought our building with some ill-gotten money of my own. My first act as the new landlord was to reduce Beth and Jennifer's rent by half. After all, I had paid peanuts for the building, and I really didn't need to charge them a lot to make money. I then rented out Tom's old apartment to an old couple on a fixed income. To be honest, they pay less than Beth and Jennifer, but I think the ladies would be okay with that. So now I get to live rent-free in a building that I own. Of course, I use the building to help hide where I actually get my real income from, but like I said, I'm not the hero of the story. I just sometimes do the right thing, but usually in the most wrong way possible. But now that I have a house that I get rent from, maybe it's time to stop what I actually do. What do you think?
Don't call me names. Poor people like you can't speak to me like that. And if you are no more, I won't have anyone questioning my inheritance. I need a soft life.
Suddenly, she pulled a gun out of her coat and pointed it at me. Without thinking, I ran, and I did so just in time as she fired at me, missing by only a few inches. Distraught, I called the police once I got somewhere where I felt safe, and I filed charges against her. Thankfully, she wasn't hard to find, as she had stayed at the funeral and threatened more grieving people with her gun. Eventually, the police showed up, and after a few tense minutes, they figured out that she was out of ammunition. My name is Kim, and I found out something recently that has really thrown my life for a loop. It has been quite the devastating few months, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start off by saying that I am the youngest of two. My sister Samantha is 2 years older than me, and we have had a rather odd relationship. We never really got along well, but we also never really fought either. I tried to get to know her over the years and connect with her, but she never reciprocated my attempts. Hey Samantha, there is a new movie coming out this Friday. Would you be interested in going to see it with me?
A movie? Why would I want to?
I don't know. I just assumed that you would want to do something with me.
Nope. Sorry, but I have plans for that night. I'm going to be washing my hair.
I knew that it was a complete lie and a really bad one at that, but it wasn't the first time that I had attempted to reach out to her. But after so many failed attempts, I just decided to give up. My parents both noticed that we weren't close, but only my father actually cared. Oddly enough, the more that Samantha was distant with me, the more our mother began being distant with her. It was like our mother was punishing her for the way she was treating me. I never did ask my mother why she treated Samantha differently, but it made much more sense later on. Oddly enough, though, the older I got, the more I realized that my distance with Samantha was kind of a blessing, as she acted very unusually. She had no friends, and the odd time that she tried to make friends, people would be completely unnerved by her odd behavior. I truly began to wonder if she was adopted. So years passed, and nothing changed. However, both Samantha and I grew up, went to college, and eventually moved away from home. We saw each other and our parents at holidays, but aside from that, we were pretty much just strangers. Whenever friends would ask if I had family, and I told them how distant I was with my sister, they wondered what had happened to cause the divide, and they were always confused as to when I told them that I didn't even know. Sometimes it just felt like we were born on different planets. One day, however, I got the news that my father had become terribly ill, and my mother was showing signs that she could become ill as well. The two of them had traveled overseas, and while our father had clearly been afflicted with a strange illness. Both Samantha and I went to see them at the hospital. Both our mom and dad were doing very poorly. Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry to see you like this.
Oh, Kim, I don't think I am going to make it. You need to know something.
But what is it, Mom? I could tell that she wanted to say something to me, but just then, Samantha walked into the room and she whispered only loud enough for me to hear.
5, 42, and 6.
I didn't understand what she meant, but just then, Samantha walked over and pushed me aside. She had grown even more rude over the years. The next day, our father passed away, and within a few hours after that, our mother did as well. I was so incredibly upset and disheartened that I didn't notice Samantha leave. Instead, I just worked with the hospital to make plans for my parents' funeral. Only after everything was all set up, I was exhausted, and although it would be odd, I decided that I would head over to my parents' house to get some rest, since I would need to go there next to pick out outfits for them to be buried in. However, when I arrived, the doors were all barred shut. My house key worked, but somehow the doors would not open. It was almost as if someone had barricaded themselves inside. I banged on the door for a dozen minutes when suddenly Samantha called from inside the house.
You aren't getting in.
Damn it, Samantha, what the hell is wrong with you? Let me in. We need to plan the funeral together. Can you act like a normal person for once in your goddamn life?
Just leave. It's my house now. Mom and Dad wanted me to have it. Now leave.
She was acting insane. I had no idea what her problem was. If anything, our parents would no doubt leave all their belongings to the both of us equally. So I didn't know what she was trying to do by barricading herself in the house. I had just as much right to go inside as she did. Hours passed, and while I could hear her moving furniture and even the occasional sound of breaking glass, it seemed like she was looking for something. There wasn't much I could do, but then I finally got annoyed enough, and I grabbed a large rock and used it to smash the back door handle so that I could slip into the house. Even though using the rock made a very loud noise, my sister didn't notice, and so I snuck up to my parents' bedroom and began to go through their closet. It took some time, but I managed to find some outfits for them. However, as I was looking, I noticed a safe with a keypad in the back of the closet. On a whim, I walked over and punched in the code that my mother had whispered to me before she died, and it surprisingly opened. Inside was a large yellow envelope. However, as I grabbed it, Samantha rushed into the room and looked crazed as she saw me inside the house. She suddenly picked up a large flashlight that had rolled out of the closet and tried to hit me with it. In a mad dash, I ran out of the house with the envelope and the outfits, but Samantha still managed to hit me a few times as I did so. Once outside, I ran to my car and drove off. A few blocks later, I stopped my car and tried to get calmed down. I then opened the envelope, and instantly, I knew why my mother had wanted me to find the envelope. Inside, it were several letters written by my mother saying that my sister Samantha was only my half-sister. Apparently, my father had cheated on my mother and a child was born from that cheating. My mother had agreed to let my father keep the child since her mother died in childbirth. The letter further went on to say that while my parents had been exceptionally wealthy, that all of it was due to my mother. My father had been secretly incredibly poor when handling money, or really any responsibility, and so my mother had complete control and ownership of not only the house, but quite literally, all of my parents' wealth. Furthermore, there was also a copy of her will, and she left everything to me. My mother had always resented my father for what he had done, and had vowed that while she would help raise Samantha, that she would never leave her family wealth to her. After all, Samantha only ever reminded her of her husband's betrayal. I didn't know how to feel, and so I just put all thoughts of it on the back burner and got ready for the funeral. While I made the preparations, I didn't see or hear from Samantha even once, but on the day of the funeral, she showed up wearing designer clothing and sporting a lot of jewelry. She had very clearly gone out and spent a lot of money to look like she did.
Oh, poor Kim. It's a shame you weren't as clever as me.
Clever? What are you talking about?
Well, you were clever like me, then you would have gone to Mom and Dad's and claimed your inheritance like I did, but I beat you to the punch. Their house and all their belongings are now mine.
You do realize that that isn't how it works, right? Regardless, this is their funeral. This really isn't the place to discuss our inheritance. Why are you being such a ghoul?
Don't call me names. Poor people like you can't speak to me like that. And if you are no more, I won't have anyone questioning my inheritance. I need a soft life.
Suddenly, she pulled a gun out of her coat and pointed it at me. Without thinking, I ran, and I did so just in time as she fired at me, missing by only a few inches. Distraught, I called the police once I got somewhere where I felt safe, and I filed charges against her. Thankfully, she wasn't hard to find, as she had stayed at the funeral and threatened more grieving people with her gun. Eventually, the police showed up, and after a few tense minutes, they figured out that she was out of ammunition, and they rushed her and beat her until she was unconscious. She then spent the next few weeks in prison, where a psychiatrist examined her and determined that she was a danger to herself and others, and they had her committed to a psychiatric prison. There, they keep her heavily medicated, as she has only grown to be even more erratic and violent. Part of me worries that she will one day be released, but by the time that she does, she won't be able to find me. After she went to prison, I brought the will forward and read, and once I had all my parents' money and home, I transferred all of the money into my bank account and then sold the house and added that there as well. Of course, if I had stayed in town, then I would have had to face her eventually once she got out of prison. So instead, I changed my name and flew to another country where my money will go very far. So far, it's been a couple of decades, and while she could very well still be in the hospital, I take no chances and refuse to contact her. Instead, I just enjoy my days living in a tropical paradise while she rots away in a padded cell. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.